105.9 Academy FM.
The sound of Folkestone.
A Wellcome Trust organisation, a scientific body that promotes the public understanding of science. Our project works with young people and gives them the opportunity to ask a question of scientific nature to a local professional. This week, we'll be hearing a collection of those interviews. Today's is about heart attacks.
Hello, my name is Jake, and I've been doing the Wellcome Trust Science Project. I'm interested in cardiac arrests and why they can happen. I'm interested in this because of the recent story about Mwamba, the footballer. And not long ago, someone from my football team suffered from one. I just want to know why this can happen to young people. I spoke to Dr. Nick Morley-Smith, a local GP, and asked him, can you tell me what the heart does?
Well, Jake, I've got a heart here in my hand, a model of a heart. It is really a roundish oval organ which has got 4 chambers. These are parts of it which are separated. So it's a bit like a large orange which is cut into 4. And these 4 chambers are separated by valves. These are called the heart valves, which you may have heard about. Have you heard about heart valves?
No, not before.
Not before, okay. Well, what the heart does, it's a pump. So it's a muscular pump that pumps blood around the body. It takes blood which has been to all the limbs and to the brain, and that is called deoxygenated blood because it's sent blood through to all the circulation and given oxygen to all the tissues, and then that blood comes back to the heart, which pumps it through the lungs where it's reoxygenated. So as we breathe air, the oxygen is transferred from the lungs into the blood, and the heart is a pump that moves the blood. Okay, so the bottom part of the heart is called the ventricles. These are the main muscular bits, and the top part of the heart are called the atrium, and these are the bits that collect the blood initially before it goes into the ventricles.
What's a cardiac arrest?
Okay, well, a cardiac arrest is where the heart stops. Now, part of the structure of the heart is muscle, and we have what we call a conducting system. And then we have blood vessels in it. So we have muscles and arteries which supply blood to the muscle, and then we also have a conducting system, rather like electric wires, through which stimulate the muscle and make it contract. So, what happens in a cardiac arrest? The heart actually stops or doesn't beat properly for one reason or another. Now, we can broadly divide types of heart attack into 2 age groups. One, the elderly, and that is usually due to a heart attack. So that's where they've had a large blockage in one of the arteries or blood vessels that supplies blood to the heart, and then the heart muscle has died for some reason or another. And that's the most common cause of a cardiac arrest. That's where you hear of somebody suddenly dying because they've had a clot or blockage in their coronary artery, which is the blood vessel that supplies blood to the heart muscle. The other type of cardiac arrest is due to an abnormal rhythm of the heart. Now, a heart normally beats at a roughly 72 beats per minute, and it is regular. When a cardiac arrest is due to a change or abnormal rhythm of the heart is beating extremely fast, probably more than 180 beats per minute. And therefore the heart is not pumping blood properly through the body because it's going so fast. So the other type of heart attack can be due to problems with the muscle. And this occurs in people who have some abnormality of the muscle of their heart, or who have got an acute infection of the heart muscle. But that's rare and not at all common.
So why do cardiac arrests happen?
Well, they happen because in the first instance you get a clot of blood in the coronary artery, or in the second instance you get an abnormality of rhythm. And it's that abnormality of rhythm which is called ventricular fibrillation. That's a very rapid beating of the heart. The heart is still beating, but it's going so fast it's almost fluttering.
Okay. So as it's happening, what goes through the body?
Well, because it's no longer pumping blood, the body's tissues become starved of oxygen. So that means that there is no oxygen supply to particular organs. So these are the particular organs are the brain, the kidneys, and the lungs themselves.
Does this affect the brain in any way?
Well, the brain is the most vulnerable organ, because if you have no oxygen supply to the brain, in 3 minutes it will be damaged. So it doesn't take very long for the brain to be damaged if there's been a heart attack and the blood is not being pumped properly through the brain itself.
So why can this happen to young and fit people?
Well, that's a very good question, because it does, and sometimes we don't know the exact cause. But generally with young fit people, it's either a problem of the muscle of the heart. There's some abnormality of the muscle, and that's called a cardiomyopathy. It's a long word, but it means that the heart muscle is abnormal. The other cause of it is this condition which we call ventricular fibrillation, where the heart is beating so fast that it doesn't in fact pump blood properly. Now, we're not sure what causes that, but in young people it can be a viral illness and then excessive exercise, or it can be a problem within the electrical conducting system of the heart, or it can just occur out of the blue for no apparent reason.
What effects can it have?
Well, the most likely effect of these is unfortunately sudden death, because most of these people particularly young people who have something like this, probably it's not anticipated, comes out of the blue, and it occurs where there's no defibrillators or equipment in which to try and help them. I think a good example of this was Fabrice Muamba. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about him?
Well, he was basically playing for, I think it was Bolton, and then he just collapsed on the football pitch.
Yeah. And do you know what happened then?
I'm not sure, because I didn't watch the match. I just heard about it.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. He collapsed on the football match, I think, not long after he started. And they were playing Tottenham Hotspur. And there was some specialists in the crowd who immediately jumped up and got to his aid. And he survived. But that was only because of the first aid people and paramedics who were at the ground, and also the specialists who helped.
How can people reduce the risk of having one?
Well, I think the main preventative things are to stop smoking, to control your weight, and to do regular exercise.
So if someone has a cardiac arrest, what can you do?
If you arrive at a scene or happen to be where somebody has had a cardiac arrest, the first thing you need to do is to actually call for help. So you need to look around, make sure there's no danger to yourself, and call for help. The second thing to do is to check that they haven't got anything in their airway that's blocking their airway. And the third thing is to see whether or not they're breathing. Okay. And once you've established whether or not they're breathing, you can then start pushing on the chest to try and keep the blood pumping through the heart. And this is done by pumping on the chest. And there are specific ways of doing this. But essentially, whoever's at the scene, they need to put their hands on the chest and pump 30 times quickly.
So if you can get an ambulance and get the person that's suffering to the hospital, would they be able to survive it?
The answer to that question is they may, or certainly that they will have a better chance of surviving it. The number of people who have a cardiac arrest out of a hospital and survive is very, very small. But any help that you can get as soon as you see that someone's had such an episode will be helpful. But it is a pretty fatal condition, unfortunately. But I think the main thing is that you understand and know how to resuscitate a person. And in fact, people are becoming more aware of this, and there are defibrillators which are now in public areas. For example, large stations like Waterloo and other places where they're available. And of course, I think the thing is not to be fearful, that if you see somebody who has had a cardiac arrest, to do whatever you can and whatever you know, because that's certainly better than not doing anything.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morley Smith, and have you enjoyed it?
I have indeed, Jake, and it's good to meet you.
105.9 Academy FM Folkestone.
Made in Folkestone.